Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 199th edition of the Frank and Stan chat. Yeah, we started these, didn't we, Stan, in May 2020? And
Yeah.
yeah, we thought we'd do a couple, and now we're on nearly at the 200th. But for those of you watching on video, you'll notice that we have a guest at the bottom of the screen. So, Chaelsea Slater. Hello, Chelsea.
Hello. I'm
Hello.
a little bit gutted that I'm not your 200th
Well,
guest. I feel like that would be an epic celebration.
it would. I have to say, should we reveal it now, Stan, who our 200th guest is?
That's up to you, Frank. It's up to you.
All right, Chelsea, our 200th guest is a man called Sir Michael Wilshaw, who used to be the chief inspector at Ofsted, who has made it very clear that he's not happy with the direction of the inspectorate. So he's going to be joining us next week. So I
Did you
could
just
lie.
mention the O word then, Frank?
Oh God, I did. Go on. Every time I mention the Ofsted word, Stan has this little buzzer thing that he presses. So, and it would be going all next week, Stan. Just imagine, just put some new batteries in it for next week.
Yeah, it will.
Excellent.
It will.
It will.
That's brilliant.
Um, so
Great.
how are you? How are you, Stan? Anyway.
I'm okay. The weather's not good and it's cold and
Mm.
miserable, but I'm okay. But I thought we ought to mention, Frank, when you asked me, what about congratulating you on this, was it Education Awards, Most Influential People?
I
Business and
can I
education?
just say I did not apply for this. I was as shocked as anybody, but I came in at the age of 68. I am a new entry in the 50 most influential education thinkers or whatever practitioners. Um, yeah, I actually beat Michael Wilshaw, I think, who came in um, lower down than me. As
You
did
came 23rd, didn't you, Frank?
yeah, 23rd.
Are you
Yeah,
23rd?
yeah.
It's okay. I'm making people aware that I influence you and therefore have an even greater
Actually,
influence.
all it is, Stan, is that if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have even made the chart. That's the thing, isn't it?
So this is
Oh,
Yeah.
Dutch admirals all over again.
Yeah,
I've
I
just
was.
I've just made a note for it. I'm going to congratulate you on our board as well, Frank,
Oh well,
in a
that's
few
that,
weeks' time.
that's very kind of you. I was as shocked as anybody, but pleased. I mean, at my age, you take anything that comes, really. But anyway, um, Chelsea. So, who are you, and how do we know each other, and what gets you up in the morning, basically? What drives you?
Okay, they're good questions. So yeah, I'm Chaelsea Slater and I'm the CEO and co-founder of a social enterprise called InnovateHer. And we're on a mission to get girls ready for the tech industry and the tech industry ready for girls. So basically, like in a nutshell, and I'm sure I'll plug this a little bit more later, but we educate 13 to 17-year-olds in technology, and we also work with businesses on their inclusion agenda. And how I know you, Frank, well, we met originally at Co-op, didn't we?
I was trying to work out when that was. Was it around 2017 or 2018, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years before the pandemic, when our partnership with Co-op was really starting to move because we've been partnered with Co-op for about 6 years, which is amazing.
Mm.
And yeah, we met in Manchester, and then you joined our board a couple of years after, I think in 2020,
Yeah, yeah.
joined the board. So yeah.
Yeah, I think. I mean, how many? Well, what is Innovate Her? So, before the pandemic, you used to do a lot of face-to-face stuff, didn't you? And then the
Yeah,
pandemic forced you to rethink the business model completely.
Yeah, we started out actually back in 2013 as Liverpool Girl Geeks. So I've been working on this agenda for about 11 years,
Wow.
which is frightening, really. Especially because not a lot's changed. So like I still feel have hope, but my hope has definitely dwindled over the last couple of years. Um, but yeah, we definitely we started doing face-to-face workshops more for the adult generation in technology because I worked in tech and realized there wasn't many women in the
So what
industry.
did you? I never asked you this. What did you actually do in the tech world?
So I worked for a tech company, but in digital marketing. So
Right.
I had a technical role in a marketing sense because I was looking after digital, but I didn't have one in a stereotypical sense. Like I don't have a coding background or
Mm,
anything. I
mm,
worked really closely with them, and yeah, there was no girls on the team, or women, I should say, on the team at all, apart from me. So
yeah.
that's where the passion kind of drove um
Yeah.
drove me. And then now, so we work with young people in schools predominantly, which is all free. We deliver all of the work that we do in secondary schools for free, and we're very focused on getting to those students that are in need most. And we track that through like free school meals and postcode areas and stuff like that. But then I think most importantly as well, or just as importantly, we work with industry, so tech companies to on their inclusion agenda, keeping them accountable for one, but then also giving them the inspiration to make change internally. Because we don't want to tell a young person to get into technology and then they get there and they have a really rubbish time
Yeah.
because of the culture or the practices that they have. So we I think we're really unique in that sense because we do work with both ends of the pipeline. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
like the idea about getting tech businesses ready for more women.
yeah.
That's I think that is the unique selling point of Innovate Her, isn't it? It's because there are other charities, organizations doing the work around schools, but it's not leaning into business and challenging them to prepare the ground in a better way.
And they're integrated as well. So we get a lot of the role models from the businesses as well to do the next generation work, as well as speak to the students about what they want from the workplace. And that makes, because we both work with both audiences, it makes that really easy for us to do. So yeah, I think we're in a unique position there.
So how many?
I
Go on,
don't
sorry.
think you should give up your hope or let it dwindle because you're actually involved with a massive culture change there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's a very, very slow
yeah. Well,
progress to get to that.
when I say dwindle, I feel like it's just some Sundays. I'm like,
Right.
I've got it in me to do this for another week.
Yeah,
Because it is hard work, Stan.
Yeah.
Like,
I can imagine.
yeah, you like when you see the stats and like bigger picture, sometimes you see them drop and you're like, well, we're working so hard every single day. My whole team are so dedicated and passionate to this. And it just feels really hard, this space. And this year in particular feels like the hardest. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because we've got a new government, there's budget cuts, we're in a cost of living crisis. Businesses are telling us that ED&I isn't as important to them because of the reasons I've just said, and they haven't got
Mm.
the budget for it. And yeah, it just feels like a little bit harder. So my hope's definitely not gone. I'd say it's just shifting all the time.
But I think
Like,
that's a role of CEO, though, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
I mean, I have to say that, I mean, you're describing what, in effect, I think every CEO feels on a fairly regular basis.
What I would say on a positive is that you're making some progress at the hardest possible time.
Oh.
So
that.
if the time,
I'm going to relay that to my team on Monday.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It's the hardest time with the way the world is at the moment, and certainly the country is. It's definitely the hardest time to change people's thinking and change people's culture. And
yeah,
if you're making progress, then when the light at the end of the tunnel we finally reach, things should be easier, quicker,
Yeah. I remember
more
Alan Leighton.
responsive.
I remember Alan Leighton, the chair at the co-op, saying that when business is really at its hardest, that's when you're the most creative.
Mm,
I do go along with that.
I completely agree with that because it also makes you think out of the
Mm,
box.
yeah.
It helps you to look and review your product and think about it more innovatively. Like it gets you to do the work. Like it really does. And
yeah.
I do appreciate that. I can see the learnings from it for sure. And that's what exactly we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're innovating all the time.
So I mean, I know this answer, but I'm just saying it so it gets on the screen. How many students do you actually engage with each year, and how many schools and whereabout are you touching base with, and where are they located?
So we've worked with about 56,000 students to
Do you hear
date.
that, Stan?
Wow, amazing.
56,000 students.
Yeah. And yeah, the numbers are great, but for us, it's more around the actual impact on the individual, and we're having amazing stories, specifically this year. So whilst it feels challenging in the actual schools, we've never had as much impact. So, for example, I'll just pull one case study out. So, a school in Manchester said that they worked with us for about 2 or 3 months. They're continuing to work with us, but this was 2 months in. And we worked with a group of year 9 girls in their school on a number of activities. And within that time, they had a 300% increase of girls taking computer science at
Wow.
GCSE because
Wow.
they were picking the subjects. So they looked at the data. And that's the progress that we're seeing.
Mm.
And if we could replicate that in schools across the UK, how amazing would that be?
Yeah.
And we're starting to do that. So you asked about the regional stuff. So we were born out of Liverpool. We then moved into Greater Manchester pretty quickly, Lancashire, and then now we've got schools all over. So I was just looking at some data this morning. We've got a school in Newcastle that's just signed up. London, Dover, Cornwall, Bristol, like we've
Yeah.
got a real
I think
spread.
also it was North Wales as well, wasn't there? There's a some success over in North Wales.
North Wales, where I'm from, and that's where
Yeah.
I'm from originally. And we
Whereabouts,
really
Chelsea? Just
Wrexham.
just because we're all interested in North Wales at the moment because we have caravans there.
Which is yeah the dream in Wrexham, which is
Oh,
if
I've got
Hollywood.
friends from just outside Wrexham, Ruaben.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've I used to work up there. My granddad, sorry, had a taxi business
Oh,
in well right near Ruaben, so small
excellent.
world.
Right. I think I've been really impressed with the work that InnovateHer has been doing as a board member. I think it's not a massive organization, so from that point of view, there's a lot of pressure on individuals. So I'm not surprised sometimes you feel a little bit up and down. I mean, it means a lot to you. It means an awful lot to you.
Do you do anything with primaries?
I didn't prime him to say that, Chelsea. I
I,
honestly, I
I'm
didn't.
good. I was just about to say, Frank's asked us that question. He asks us it every board meeting, really, or every
I've
other.
just got the one sort of issue that I
Well,
keep.
I mean, certainly there's one bank in particular that's pushing forward that children at the age of 7 are the most influenced by money or
Mm.
get their influence around money. So I just wondered if the same was true about technology and
It,
whether it, what you're actually doing is late in the process.
well, there was a program, I can't remember, it was called on the BBC a few years ago, like more than a few years ago, actually. Don't know whether any of you remember it, but they looked at gender stereotypes and when they start embedding, and that was from the age of 6, and they went into primary schools then. So I completely agree, and I think in terms of career as well, stereotyping does happen at a
Mm.
really early age.
Mm.
And I do think that we should do some primary school work, and we've done the odd thing. But for us, where we get our core funding is from industry who want to see these young people working at their
Yeah.
offices, at their
Yeah.
companies. So already when we're saying work with year 8, if they started this 10 years ago, they would have probably had real success, but
Mm.
they're still going on about the same things and the same challenges, right? And I get so frustrated. It is a long-term thing, and I'd love to be able to get companies on that long-term strategic view, but they are very short-term in their thinking. So it is hard for us to even get them to support year 8s,
Right.
which is the most
Well,
impactful age that
the
we have.
clever thing you need to do is find out where, because a lot of them will have children or grandchildren at primary school.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
is when their child is coming home and saying we did this, then they recognise the influence.
That is, yeah, it's a
And
really
there's
good strategy. I need to do that.
so much enthusiasm
Yeah.
from primary school kids that it'll blow them away.
Yeah.
I do feel though, Chelsea, that I keep saying this about primary, but to be honest, where your organisation is at the moment, it needs to just concentrate on that core offer, doesn't it? And just not expanding too rapidly because there are risks associated with that approach. So no.
Yeah, and I mean, I love primary school kids. Like they're so much more receptive to what
Mm,
you're doing. Like when I've done I think me and you actually were at one Frank
we
together, and
were, yeah.
they were all waving. They were like doing there's like hearts in the thing. And I was like, I love you all. Whereas the teenagers are like moody on the screen, and they just don't want to give you it. It's really hard. So I would love to be able to work with younger generation, but yeah, it is hard for the strategy that we currently have.
Yeah. Um, well, thanks for all you've done. And I mean, I'll get round to one of the issues that will come back to this because I'll be talking about the Skills England paper that was published, which had a lot of stuff around digital. And we'll get into perhaps why some students are not picking that subject, going forward. So, Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, it actually caught my eye. Two things. For one, because of the 12.95 hours, 12.65
65,
hours,
yeah.
12.65 hours. But also, I have to admit, it was the name of the person who was saying, "Let's scrap this and start again," because she's the CEO of Lift Schools, and her name is Bex Boomer Clark, and it sounded to me like something from the 23rd century. But her case is that what she calls Generation Z. I apologize. I don't know these new terms. I'm an
Yeah.
old man. But they don't talk about hours. They talk about fluidity and flexibility. But I can't see that why does that require you to lose the 12.65 hours? It's all that is a figure over an annual basis. So if you want to introduce flexibility and fluidity, just use the 12.65 hours as the framework that you work within.
And nobody stops you exceeding that. In fact,
No,
most teachers exceed that already.
most teachers exceed it. It's
Yeah.
just the directed hours.
Yes.
Because my case was always that if you actually applied that to every teacher, the education system would fall apart.
It would.
Certainly at primary level, it
Yeah.
would,
Yeah.
because teachers don't work to those 12.65 hours. But it's something that I would imagine if there was a move to scrap it, would cause a lot of controversy with the teaching profession. I think this was at the Labour Party conference,
It
actually.
was. I mean, the thing for me, when you're struggling to recruit teachers in the first place, the last
Yeah.
thing you want to do is make it sound or appear as if it's even more challenging than it already is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was.
And
I
I
mean,
do think to say it like it was, that this, because it's not all teachers, because anybody on a leadership thing that
yeah,
isn't subject
no,
to
no,
12.65 hours. They're subject to any hours deemed necessary, I think the phrase is.
that's right.
So that they're not like that. And it just feels somebody at the top, the CEO of a multi-academy trust, saying, "Oh, let's scrap the working conditions of the lowest level in the schools." It just seems to me to be a bit of a strange way to go about enthusiastically trying to get people to come on board with what we're doing. Why not just talk about flexibility, fluidity, 4 day fortnights, 4 day weeks, things like that could all work within a 12.65 5 hour framework
Yeah.
without appearing, as you say, to want to affect the working conditions.
So this is quite good for you, isn't it, Chelsea? Because you've tried to be as creative as possible in terms of what the offer is for staff, the flexibility of working and what have you. Do you want to just explain a little bit about what you've been doing with regard to Innovate Her?
Yeah, so in the pandemic, and I think it's through the pandemic that people have,
Yeah.
trialed and tested things, got different opinions. And I think industries that have traditionally had like a working, I don't know much about the 12.65 hour stuff because I've not worked in schools, but I think, that they are going to see like a bit of a shaker potentially. But for us, certainly we trialed a 4-day work week in 2020. We also went fully remote, which has been challenging, but actually long term it's worked for us really well. It's meant that we've hired all across the country as well, and we've been able to have that, and that brings diversity to the team because obviously people who live in different areas come from different backgrounds, have different experiences. And then we've also implemented condensed hours, so people can choose to work a shorter week, which obviously is like we're like an agency style or service style company. We don't need to have like rigid hours really. And then we have just core hours on a Tuesday, Wednesday.
Because I don't want to reveal the name, but a colleague that I met from within InnovateHer was a teacher, but chose to come and work for InnovateHer because there was greater flexibility for her to manage her relatively young family. So these are the risks, aren't they? If schools are not creative, are not flexing, and we're finding this already at the admin, and with cleaners and things like that, they're just being in schools, they're being sort of offered much more money to work at Asda or a supermarket. That they get a little bit more flexibility about the hours that they work. They can sometimes choose those hours that they work. So in that case, schools are finding it increasingly difficult to get some of the hardest to fill jobs are not the head teachers. They're still hard, but some of the hardest to fill are some of the cleaning roles, the caretaker roles, that sort of stuff. Those sorts of colleagues.
I was in a school yesterday where they were pointing out that the salary for their TAs is less than you get in a call centre. So
it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. Because actually, one of the things that InnovateHer, offers, it's not the highest paid organisation, but actually people come into it because they believe in the cause, don't they? And the way that they're treated and the culture within the organisation.
Well, I think you're right, Chelsea. I think the lockdowns and COVID actually made people think again about going to work. And when you look at it historically, it's only since the sort of late 19th century that people went to work. Most before then, it was cottage industry. So this relatively is a new thing, working in factories and offices, because offices just copied the factory model that we all come in together and we all work together. And now we've got the technology that doesn't need to happen for many jobs, not for all jobs, but for many jobs. I think there's a resistance by some owners of big buildings, I would say.
Yeah. Well,
the offices are now empty.
Well, this week Amazon have said, haven't they? I think they're scrapping the 4-day work week, or is it that, or was it that everyone has to come to the office every day?
Everybody has to come in, which I don't know. We have a relative who works for Amazon down south, and and she has a very young family. Issues around getting the children to school on particular days. That's not easy now. That it's easy to say once you've given it to staff and the arrangements have been made for childcare and whatever, to then break those up. It's not the easiest thing to find replacements, and the impact on the children can be quite significant, So it's easy to say, oh yeah, we want everybody back, but once you've allowed them flexibility, it's actually, I think, it's more challenging to actually bring them all back and to keep the staff, motivated.
I suspect that the people who are pushing hardest for everyone back aren't people who understand the technology that's available.
I agree, and there's a trust issue there. I think, obviously, in the bigger organizations, the people at the top will not be seeing in most cases, won't be seeing what's going on the ground. They won't know any of their staff. They'll just be names and numbers. And I think for me, it comes down to trust and trust in your team. And that again comes down to like, you don't track hours, you track productivity and the
Yeah.
outcome. And I think it's really hard for some leaders to allow that to happen. You
Yeah.
need to have the trust there. But then that and what your point, Frank, earlier around that the team and like their determination and passion. At Innovate Here, we've built a culture of true trust, but that comes with like openness and vulnerability. And like most people bring their full selves to work every single day. They don't have to, and that's fine. And some days you don't, some days you do. But sharing what's actually happening creates that trust between us all, so that then you get so much better out of the person, and then they get better in return from us. And I just don't understand why people don't work like that, because it's like it
Uh,
makes for such a better
Get
working
in there,
environment.
Chelsea. Get
the
in
first
there.
time I came across, it's nothing to do with being off. Well, it is in a way. It was when parts of the office work that I was in charge of, when we had snow days, which we did because it wasn't a very safe building. Um, if I said, right, the building has to be closed because the weather's too bad for everybody to get in or whatever, then the senior staff just took the time and got paid. The junior staff had to take leave and use the leave.
Dear.
So I used to put together packages of work that could be done at home
Yeah,
and say, in the event of us expecting bad weather, you take one of these boxes home, and then when you are officially working from home, if and the difference and the it's sort of the mainly younger staff, but mainly the admin staff just took it as normal that because it was closed, yeah, it's a day off, but it's a day's leave. And I'm thinking, well, it's not a day's leave for me. It's just a day where I'm at home.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And I suspect a lot of the people who are advocating everyone back actually already have the flexibility in their role to be able to decide whether they need to go in or not.
Mm,
And they may choose to go in every day, as you say, but that's not the same as saying everybody should
no,
choose to do
no,
that or
no.
should have to do that.
Well,
exactly.
let's move on then. Chelsea, what's caught your eye this week?
Okay, so I think you mentioned the Labour Party there. It's been all over my news feeds, and it's been in Liverpool, hasn't it? Which
Yeah.
where I am. And Keir Starmer said, I think in his final speech, he revealed the joy he felt playing the flute in school. And he talked about Labour's aim of creating opportunities for future generations through sport and art. And it was quite refreshing for me that, because I've not heard many like recent MPs or politicians talk about the arts in a positive way. We've seen, I think Rishi had cut or like talked about cutting a lot of arts-based funding, or he talked about not having arts in school anymore. And yeah, it's just refreshing. I did a BTEC after
Oh,
school,
right, right.
and I'm a massive fan of BTECs. I
Mm,
just think they're so creative. And it allowed me to just express myself. I did a multimedia BTEC. So it was like film, graphic design, photography. And I learned stuff like going into a dark room and creating photos from like in that way. And then I learned how to direct a film and how to draw the Roman alphabet out and in graphic design and all of these things. It was just so many skills that I was learning that weren't academic and allowed me to be so creative. And I think honestly, that more than any other education in my life has got me to where I am today. It made me
wow.
the person I was. So when I seen that, I was just like, yes, this is absolutely true. And we know that the next generation love sports, they love art, they love music, fashion, whatever it is. They resonate with one of those things, and it's one of the things that Innovate Her has realized. How can we inspire the next generation to get into tech or just to have a career that they love and they're passionate about? It's allowing them to do those things and thinking of them as careers as well.
Yeah.
I'm going on a rant now, but
No,
I'll just
no, please
Oh,
do.
I'll,
we're with you all the way,
Yeah,
Chelsea.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
I'll,
Keep
my
going.
pet subject. So I'm
well, I want to briefly end on. So I'm really proud of one. I'm like the oldest of five or six. See, I can't even count siblings. And one of them, Ross, he's 21. He might be 23 actually, but we'll see. He did like a sports science or something in university, and he graduated last year. Then it worked for the NHS, which was amazing. But he was like, "I'm not passionate about this." And he's like you, Frank, learns the guitar. He's very good at it. He loves music. And he said to my dad, he was like, "I want to go to music college." And I need a scholarship because they don't have a lot of money. And he's applied for a London
Mm.
college. And then over the summer, he's gone to a music camp in Spain. And he just looks like he's had the best time. And he even got to play with like one of the Libertines on his guitar. And the experience that he's having now that he's changed his thinking, he was like, I'm not bothered about earning loads of money. I just want to do something that I love. And he's really lucky that he's been able to do that at a young age and have that mindset and not be stuck somewhere for a long time, which many people are. He's had the courage to do it and the support around him to say, yes, go for it. And I'm really proud of that. So it was just nice to see someone like Keir in the position he is in to talk about art in that way and sports. So
Brilliant.
love that.
well, my son did music technology at sixth form, and that was the bit because he'd learned to play the piano, he'd learned to play the clarinet, he was playing the guitar just like most boys do, just learning it by playing it.
Yeah.
And did this music technology A level, which really switched him on, and then went to Salford University to do, I think his degrees in band musicianship. And
Wow.
he said, if you're on this to make money, you think there's a career with this, you're on the wrong degree course. But yeah, it was, and what I loved about the work he did was there was a lot of technology involved, but they wouldn't let them be creative with the technology if they couldn't play the instruments that they were
Oh,
emulating with the technology. So he had to be able to play keyboards, he had to play a guitar, to be able to play drums if he was using those in the technology. So it just and that inspired him really into his career, which has been in music ever since.
Love that.
It's interesting, Chelsea, that because it moves on to the issue I was going to raise, that looking at the entries for GCSE and A level, not all of the creative arts have been devastated. So there is a problem, believe it or not, at A level in young people studying English. That's interesting, isn't it? That really is
Yeah.
for me very interesting because that says quite a lot about what they did at GCSE. Because generally, if you've enjoyed your GCSE course, you want to hop onto the English course if you enjoyed it. But things like art have held up really well. But
Yeah.
subjects like drama and also, very concerningly, design technology, they've been devastated. Um,
Wow.
and some of that is around, lack of valuing of those particular subjects, I think,
Yeah.
by schools, and actually and also technology requires quite a lot of technology, to make it work. But the other thing was that there is moving on to the computing side. There hasn't been in the last 10 years much of an increase in the number of kids either studying what was the old information technology GCSE and now moving on to the computing. There's a little bit of a rise, but it's not significant enough to make a difference, on the economy. And looking at that Skills England paper that came out this week, where it's, the green energy is a big area for development. I could talk ages about that, to be honest. Just a colleague I know is a CEO of a company in Chorley, and they're refitting businesses to try and make them more fuel efficient. So one of the things they have to do is, in order to put a heat pump into a business, they've got to drill a hole in the wall. Well, I tell you, the qualifications you need in order to be able to drill a hole in the wall. there's a story about that and whether or not actually you do need all these GCSEs to actually do that. So there are young people who haven't got those qualifications prevented from doing jobs that they can do simply because they haven't got a particular qualification. It's crazy. But there is in that Skills England paper, there is a commitment though to digital education. And I think we still have a lot of children, not a lot of students, not studying that from when they take their options. They're just not choosing. If they do choose it, it's the mathematicians that choose it because of the coding element of it. And I just wondered whether or not my perception of the of the digital industry, you've got a career in digital, but it wasn't through coding. You're
Yeah.
committed now to all of this stuff, but actually you're not. You haven't come through the normal route, have you? Just talked about the BTEC route, all the things you were doing. You got a job in marketing, only woman there. Suddenly you're leading a CEO of an organization, trying to change the world in terms of, computer education. So I just wondered what your feelings were about, you know, getting more young people into tech and whether or not what we're doing is currently the right approach at the moment.
It was one of the points I was going to pick up on, so this has led like wonderfully into that. But one of the things that I think really needs to change, or we need to think about, whether it's through Skills in England or not, is integrating tech into every single subject. And I have banged on about this in previous panels that I've been in, all of that. Because like I said before, well, no, I'll come back to that actually. So not like I said before. So if it like tech is in every single industry. So whether we're studying geography, history, sport, whatever it is, there's gonna be the jobs that you can get out of those subjects. There's gonna be elements of technology within them. We're seeing a rise in health tech, fintech, AI, like
Mm,
whatever it is, they're integrated into all of these subjects. So then what I did say before as well around passion, if that happened, so if tech was in and I'm not talking just about physical technology, because I do think, as you said, Frank, we have to have physical tech to enable technology in schools. That is one challenge. But I'm talking about integrating technology, as in the skills that you need to get into these industries, into the curriculum in every single subject. It will mean that we can say to young people, do what you love
mm,
and pick the subjects at GCSE that you feel really passionate about. You don't need to be good at them.
Mm.
You just need to have that passion. And then they will be integrated into technology and digital, which every single person needs. There's a huge lack of digital and tech skills across the UK and across the world. So if we did embed them into everything, it would be forced on people, and it needs to be because people don't understand that it's vital and critical that they need those skills. And also it'll be transformative in terms of them having that perception, like you just said, Frank, around coding. It's not just about coding. You can go into it from any angle. So
mm.
that's what I think needs to happen, and that's where my passions lie with it. I don't know whether you both agree because you've both been in education for so long. I know that is that a big ask? Like I think it's a small ask.
It's a
I'm
small
like,
ask.
Yeah.
what do you
It's the bit about can you put things together. I always remember somebody saying you're trying to make a fruit salad, not a soup. So you're trying to keep those things separate but integrated together rather than a mess of things that nobody really can pick out. But some of us have done that with the curriculum for a long time, and at the moment that's not the viewpoint, which is why we've got maths separate from English, separate from geography, and the links between them aren't really expressed as well as they ought to be or could be. Apart from in my favourite part of primary school, the reception, where
Yeah.
children do all that together and don't see separate subject headings. Although, by the time they're 2 years older than that, they're already being told that that's not maths, that's
Yeah.
English, that's,
Mm.
and it should just be it's learning, and these things all fit together. They fit together in your brain. So why do we make them artificially separate things? If you're doing geography and history, there's such an overlap in what those two subjects are that it ought to be humanities. It makes more sense.
Yes.
But
Mm.
we've
I-
got some very, very firm views that that's not the way, even though, in my view, it's the way you learn. And
Yeah.
as you've said, that suddenly that access to creativity and somebody wanting you to be creative and encouraging you makes a difference to the way you look at a subject, look at learning.
Well, exactly. And shouldn't we be so taking the skills aside, like the hard skills, shouldn't we be looking at getting people to have a growth mindset, be resilient, be creative, think outside the box, problem solve, because also we don't know what jobs are going to be out there in
No.
10 years,
No.
20 years time. So it's hard for us to integrate the skills. So I think it's more important to have that growth mindset and that mindset where you can go, I can get into any job because I can speak to people, communicate, I can problem solve. And yeah, why, where's all that within the curriculum? Like, it's, yeah, and with the rise of AI as well, we've already seen how rapid
Yeah.
that that field is going. It's so quick and it's scary and amazing all at once.
Yeah.
That is going to really transform what careers are going to be available for this next generation. So we need to get them ready to go into that without knowing really what they're going into, but to
Yeah.
be excited about that as well. And I just don't think that we're doing that. And
I,
that's
I,
what
I
I'm
I
afraid
love
of.
the way that you described, go for the thing that you feel most passionate about.
Yeah.
I think that, like for the job you're doing, you get up in the morning, there are some days where but actually you're driven to do it because you're passionate about achieving something out of it. And I still see young people, some of whom leave school and actually don't really feel as though they've achieved much. They're not passionate about much. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
School was something you had to get through. For me, it was always, there were a few subjects, not all of them, but a few subjects that I just thought, you know what, I'm turning in today because of this. History,
Mm.
Dave Milne, PE, I love the PE. So I used to turn up for those, and that kept me interested.
Didn't
Yeah.
Ken Robinson talk about finding your element in
Yes,
one of his books? He calls it the element that's inside you that is the thing you need to find. And once you've found that, you follow it and take the career that best reflects the element inside you that's driving it.
yeah.
That.
I
And there's
also,
a book as well. Oh, sorry,
no,
Frank. Do you
go
want
on,
me?
you go, Chelsea, then
A
we'll
book
finish.
called Ikigai. Have you heard of it?
No,
It's about how the oldest people in the world live, and they're in Japan, and I can't remember where they are in Japan, but they talk about finding your purpose. And
Mm.
that is one of the most important things you can do to live a long life is to find a purpose as well as a community, as well as some other things around food and nutrition and exercise. But that book is just so wonderful, and it's similar to what you just mentioned, Stan, around that. I just think it's so
yes,
important.
go on. You're not going to tell me you've got it, Stan.
Of course, I've got it, but
It's only a little book. I'm just trying to look.
Got it.
Is that it? Oh,
Oh no,
your element one, yeah.
yeah,
I want to
that's the
read
Ken
that.
Robinson one. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, well, look, I'm going to bring it because we've probably been. I didn't make a note of when we started, but I think it must have been about 4:10. So here we are, sort of 50 minutes later, and we probably could go on for another 50 minutes. But Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love to keep in touch with Innovate Her. So if you're willing to come back next year and just give us an update as to what you're doing, you seeing
tell
all
us about all those primary children and how excited.
yeah. It's inspirational for me to be able to show uh, my grandchildren, particularly the girls, seeing you as a CEO of this organization. It does make them feel. I hope it makes them feel as though they can do something like that in the future, you know.
I love that.
So well done to you, and thank you, Stan. And next week we have the former chief inspector on. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be on the chat. I hope it's going to be as easy as this week's, because it's been a dog.
I hope so as well for
Yeah,
you.
thank you very much. Okay, so until next week, to the 200th edition of the Frank and Stan chat. It's goodbye from us all. So cheerio, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.